Talk about what happens when governments fuse together with corporations. What happens? Stacey.
Well, it's certainly no country for small business. Remember that film, No Country for Old Men? Well, we have become no country for small businesses. As everybody knows, like all of the tech giants have been raking it in during this lockdown and COVID pandemic. The small businesses were allegedly there were some of these like PPP loans that were meant for them, and most of it went to friends of the big banks and bigger clients of the big banks that got all of the free money that then got discharged. So I'm going to show you a headline from the summer. This was from August in Bloomberg News, and they said small businesses are dying by the thousands and no one is tracking the carnage. Big companies are going bankrupt at a record pace, but that's only part of the carnage. By some accounts, small businesses are disappearing by the thousands amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and the drag on the economy from these failures could be huge. This wave of silent failures goes uncounted in part because real-time data on small business is notoriously scarce, and because owners of small firms often have no debt and thus no need for bankruptcy court.
Yeah, this is curious. What sticks out is that they're not tracking this information. So the small businesses are the lifeblood of the economy. It's like saying the country decided not to keep track of its children, right? It's like saying we had 10 kids, but they wandered off one day, and we found out a year later that they all died. But we don't care because we were busy doing whatever it was, watching Netflix or something. So it's interesting, especially now in an era of big data and pervasive data and surveillance capitalism, where these same companies that are benefiting by the extermination of the small firms can tell you how many nose hairs you have in your left nostril at any given moment. It can tell you what your earwax tastes like. Jeff Bezos has probably tasted more earwax than any executive we know in America today because he's got a fetish. He should know that the small businesses that he's putting out of business will ultimately kill his customers. But wait, he doesn't care.
Yeah, right. And I guess that's kind of old-fashioned in a way. We haven't emerged from the 19th century when people used to have 10, 15 kids because half of them would die from all the diseases that we can now treat. So now we have to have 10 or 15 companies because most of them are going to be killed off by oligopolies or monopolies that then use some of their ill-gotten gains to finance one of the two political parties allowed, and then, of course, they get the laws passed to put these people out of business. So while the businesses are small individually, the collective impact of their failures could be substantial. Firms with fewer than 500 employees account for about 44% of all U.S. economic activity, according to a U.S. Small Business Administration report, and they employ almost half of all American workers. Again, like everybody's on lockdown, there are rent and mortgage moratoriums now being extended to May 1st in some locations, like in New York City. AOC was just bragging how they've extended the rent so you don't have to pay your rent. You haven't had to pay your rent since March in most places, and now you don't have to pay it until May 1st in Manhattan. But of course, that means like the person who owns the home or the property isn't getting paid as well, but there's no compensation for them. So you see this playing out in the number. So no country for small businesses. Here's from Wolf Richter. Brick and mortar retail meltdown in stunning Manhattan style. Years before and now during the pandemic, store rents had already plunged amid surging vacancies. Then in spring, the market froze. When it thawed, rents dropped to 10-year lows. 13 charts by quarter. I'll just show you that the area near Trump Tower, so Madison Avenue, 57th Street to 72nd Street, and rents are down 54%. So, you know, Manhattan's famous for shopping, right? And it's because it doesn't have those huge malls. It's all like boutique shops. It's really interesting locations. But it's rents are collapsing because the tenants are moving out. They're going bankrupt.
Right. So, I mean, we've talked about this in the past in terms of being medievalism. And we had the church at that time who had a monopoly on heaven and would hand out these papal indulgences for people who they deemed worthy. And nobody could argue with that, or else they would be crucified. And then we had the Enlightenment, and we had Adam Smith and we had free market capitalism. And that was a short 200-year experiment because now we're back to this medieval model where instead of papal indulgences from the Pope, we now have the money indulgences printed at the Fed with the high priests like AOC and Jerome Powell and Janet Yellen. So we're back to medievalism, and that's why I think it's correct to refer to the unwashed masses in America and elsewhere around the world who are participating in the global insurrection against banker occupation as peasants. We have peasants. That would be billions of people around the world, and it would include about 200 million Americans, and that number is growing almost exponentially because the high priests of the money printers believe that you must pay homage to their saintliness and godliness, or they won't give you any of their free money. Oh, it's so cozy. A lot of times when you put corporations together with government, corpocracy, it takes other forms and names like fascism. Shh, don't tell anybody. It's fascist. They'll get really angry.